Susan, despite all of this, James Comey was just interviewed over the weekend, and he said that he does not, well, he does not want President Trump to be impeached. Here's his reason.
I hope Donald Trump is not removed from office by impeachment, because it would let the country off the hook. And it would drive into the fabric of our nation a third of the people believing there was a coup. And we need a moment of inflection where we all get off the couch and say, that is not who we are, and in a landslide, rid ourselves of this attack on our values. And if we, in a way, short-circuited that with an important, legitimate process through the Constitution, I worry that we'd be letting ourselves off the hook in a way, and we wouldn't have the moment of clarity that we need in this country. That said, if the facts are there and the legislative branch, two houses of Congress think it's appropriate, that's fine.
Susan, what about his point? This is what elections are for, is what he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that is the ideal scenario, of course, is that a president serves out his term of office and the American people decide every 4 years. What impeachment is there for is sort of an emergency release valve whenever you have a president who is not competent to continue to serve in the office. And I think it is important that we understand that that we not over politicize impeachment, even though it obviously is a political remedy. You know, this is one of the Congress's sort of most important powers. It's not unlike the power to declare war. It's something that really does sort of rip at the fabric of the nation, and it should only be employed whenever it is absolutely necessary to remove someone from office. You know, one thing we haven't seen, certainly from congressional Republicans, is the things that you would expect in advance of impeachment, putting those congressional constraints on the president, engaging in serious congressional fact-finding. And I think what those filings show from Friday is that, you know, things are going to get worse for the president from here by every indication. And so congressional Republicans that are sort of looking around and deciding, hey, where does this evolve to over the next 6 or 8 months? You know, is this going to wind up in a crisis point that actually does bring a lot of other people down with it? You know, that is certainly, it was bad news what they saw, you know, Friday afternoon.
It is interesting, though. Jerry Nadler, who will be the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, which is where it would all begin if there were going to be impeachment, basically told Jake yesterday, we are not there yet. It is not happening now. So you would need to see more to trigger it in Jerry Nadler's mind, and his mind may be the one that matters here. George, Greg, I want to put up on the screen the tweet from George Conway about this, who was reflecting on James Comey's comments about whether or not it is impeachment now, and Comey saying that he wants to wait till 2021. George Conway tweets, I'm increasingly optimistic that we can do better than this. George Conway, of course, is married to Kellyanne Conway, senior advisor to the president, but is also a really, really good lawyer, is looking at all this and saying the evidence is mounting. Greg, how much more evidence do you think there would be in order to trigger something like that?
Yeah, another fascinating tweet by George Conway. I would agree with Jim Comey's point, especially the last part of his point, which is that if the evidence becomes overwhelming, then the Constitution does contemplate impeachment as a remedy. I would submit that the House Democrats would be well advised that impeachment proceedings should really only commence in a bipartisan way. If the facts and the evidence are such that the House majority can get Republicans on board with conducting hearings, and it's truly a bipartisan effort, with some assurance that the Senate would, in a bipartisan way, carefully consider the evidence in the trial that would then commence in the Senate, then I think the American people would support impeachment. But anything short of that, I would agree with Jim Comey, might look too political, too partisan to the American people.
Hey, Phil, now that things appear to be, at least after Friday, happening in a much more rapid-fire way, where these disclosures that are big are coming out for all of us to see, any way for you to tell what you think Robert Mueller's time frame is?
No, partly because we continue to see evidence of people lying, and we continue to see a volume of evidence on things like Russia contacts going back, in some cases, 3 years or more, that tell me that interviews where people are lying and mountains of data where you're getting financial information, travel information, phone information are piling up. Boy, I would have thought this would have shut down last summer. That said, I don't know how many more interviews you have to conduct. You do have, as you know from a few weeks ago, the documentation from the president where he answers questions. That, to me, suggests we're getting into endgame. You don't go to the key player in the investigation until you've looked at all the peripheral players. So I said last summer we'd shut down. If we're not shut down this spring, I'm going to give up predicting. I'm done. I would have predicted, for example, just to tell John that the New England Patriots would have won yesterday, but they really mailed it in. So I'm wrong on a lot of this prediction stuff.
That's gratuitous. I'm throwing a flag on that. You didn't even bring
I'm
that
giving
up
him
there.
the tissues again.
Susan, I want to
He's
give you the last
devastated.
word because Phil doesn't deserve it after that. Which is, when you look at Jerome Corsi, for instance, who had a plea deal agreement written out to negotiate with his lawyers, with the special counsel's office, do you think we will ultimately see him charged? Would they have gone that far if they weren't going to then charge him? And where's Roger Stone? And might we see this all before Christmas?
Yeah, I think it's clear that we are going to see at least a few more indictments before this comes to a conclusion. And whenever we talk about whether or not Mueller is wrapping up, I think Mueller is getting to the end of his investigation, and whether that's on a time frame of several weeks or several months, nobody knows. But the end of the investigation is the start of something else. And so whenever we think about what might be in that Mueller report, what he might be handing over to Congress, what other indictments might still be coming down the pipeline, I do think that we are seeing more and more that the conclusion or the end of the special counsel's probe might be bad news for the president and not good news.